to click around and type into fields. There's no need to look up API documentation. You don't need to know how any of the applications work under the hood. You just have to know what buttons, what fields that a person would click in to get the expected outcome. So when we're talking about UiPath, I did mention earlier how it's Windows specific. So again, if you're on Mac or Linux, you're going to need a virtual machine. Trust me, I tried to find a way around it. There isn't one. So UiPath integrates with all of the major GUI frameworks, whether it's Win32, Windows Forms, HTML, Java. It integrates with all of those. So if the applications that you're interfacing with are built in any of these particular frameworks, you can make an automation with UiPath. So let's check out the modern design for this. So I'm going to switch back over to Studio here. Maybe we'll get rid of the switch statement just to clean things up a bit. And maybe we do just clean things up a little bit. So right now we have this basic conditional, and let's say no error is thrown. So from here, what we can do is start looking at some of those UI automations. So I'm going to minimize some of the things over here in the activities panel, and we'll just go to available. And we'll look at what we have available in the UI automation drop down here. And you'll see there are quite a few things. So we can go in a particular application and click, drag and drop, highlight, hover. We can do pretty much anything that a user would do inside of an application. And then let's say we're here in the browser. So let's go to some URL. I'll drag that over here. And I don't know, let's say we'll go to Google. And I need to put this inside of a application thing. So I'll actually drag this up here and then drag my go-to URL inside of here. And so there we go. All right. So it's going to bring me outside of here. So I'm going to go to this object thing and yeah, we'll go ahead and install an extension. Oh, nope. We'll install that extension a little bit later, but you'll basically, let's say for an application, you'll need to use this application container, and then inside of it, there'll be another sequence that lets you go to the URL, and then you'll be able to interact with it by typing into a certain field, and we'll get into how we actually target these fields when we talk about selectors. But you'll be able to go to a specific application, log in, type into the fields, click the buttons, highlight the text, exactly like a user would. So this is how we start to build out that more complex functionality when we have larger processes to automate. Oh, I think I see a question. For UI automation, can you trigger an action based on file save? Yes, there is something in here that will let you trigger that. So I think it's under file. Maybe it's under workbook. I know it's in here somewhere, but it might be under a slightly different name. I think it's this file change trigger, or you can basically build that same functionality with some of the tools that we have available here. So if we wanted to do something like trigger an action when a file is saved as a certain thing, then we would probably come to this like little system drop down, go in our files, and figure out what that would look like. So it might not explicitly be save file. Like, make sure that you don't get too hung up on the names of things, because sometimes we do get a little creative and we have to mush things together to make the functionality we want, which kind of ties back to that earlier question where you might want to save a particular workflow and reuse it throughout different projects. So that was a good question. Are there any other questions? Sweet. So this is the old sequence we were working with. I'm going to delete that out and just make this really simple. So I'm going to use this assign thing. And to kick things off, let's just start with, let's use our username variable and say that we want to convert it to formatted username. All right, so we have our two strings, and we're going to assign username something. So we'll say it's admin. And then from here, we will take the username and we're going to actually write a VB expression here. So we have a username value defined, and then this is why we should actually explain what's happening at these different activities. So in this case, we're going to assign a raw username, and I'll add some, I don't know, let's say an underscore something to this, just because. And then we're going to format the assigned username. So now we know what's happening in this workflow. So what we're going to do for this assign username part, I'm going to click on this plus and open it in the advanced editor. And this is where we can start to write out our expression. So in this case, we're going to take the username and let's just split it at that underscore. So we'll take our username and we use our dot notation just like you would with VBA. And you can see, since this is a string data type, we have all of these different methods and properties available to use on the data held in this variable. So if there were, I don't know, any particular methods you wanted to call, you can just kind of scroll through here and see what each method does. But there are a few you'll end up using a lot more than others. For example, let's find our split. So with this, you can see what split takes. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. And of course, we need our parentheses. And inside of that parenthesis, we'll put our underscore. And then if I'm not mixing up programming languages again, which there's a chance I am, will have that bracket notation. So I think I am mixing up under, yep. Let me get that back open here. So if I split this, then I should be able, let me see if it likes that expression, and it doesn't. I'm trying to untangle my programming things. So if I split this, I think I'm forgetting how the split works in VB.NET. Give me 1 second. I think I know how that one works. So with the substring, I'll take this starting index and I'll go to, I don't know how long of a string I think this should be, which is 5 characters, and I'll hit OK. And now, if I run this sequence, I'll just run it in debug mode. And let me actually log this out so that we can see what's happening. And we'll just put it as info. And we'll make another expression where we have our, let's say, split username include. Okay, so if I run this, it looks like it executed correctly. And I will actually put a breakpoint here so maybe we can see that value. So we'll go ahead and run it. And then if I check the value of my name here, this is where the debugging tools come in handy quite a bit. So this is the username variable over here in our left panel. And you can see what our formatted username is as well. So, expand that a little bit. You can see that the formatted username variable has this admin value now. So we have our username out of it. So that's how we start to do some of this string manipulation in UiPath Studio. And with this expression, as long as we go to this advanced editor, you can chain together any number of string methods and do any type of operations that you want. So this is where it will help to get some of that kind of programming background, especially with VB.NET. You don't have to dive super deep into it, but it does help to at least know what some of those basic methods are and how they work in this particular context. But any expression that you would write in VB.NET, you can use in UiPath Studio. So that's just an example of how you might do some